All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to Watercolor Wizardry. I am back here at a slightly different angle. We're trying out the iPad view. I want to plug a few things before we get started. So this week at the 20th at 6 p.m., we have Chaos Commentary featuring Dawn, or sorry, I didn't read it beforehand this time, or Dawn Vodohen? Vodolen? Anyway, French Dawn. And he's going to be talking about his experience with D&D, and Kat and Chris are going to be interviewing him. Should be really fun. They did the same thing with B. David Walters recently. You can catch that video on YouTube. And then the 21st at 5 p.m. we have At the Threshold, which is our other long-term campaign. And the 22nd, the following day at 7 p.m. we have Solemn Exterior. And then next week we have Watercolored Wizardry again, but there's going to be a new schedule, just like there is today, because I am running my very own 5e all-fem homebrew game. And it will have its second one-shot, which is like a prequel to the long-term campaign, introducing the other three characters. That's our show, MissGuided Magic. It starts at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. And right now we're about to do Watercolor Wizardry, but at 4:30 p.m. we are doing the first one-shot of MissGuided Magic with two of the characters that we drew previously, Beetlebug and Scoria, played by Abby and Kristen. Or Chris, I keep saying Chris because we have two Kristens in the campaign, which is wild. So Kristen, one, very generously offered to go by Chris. So I'm used to calling her Kristen as well. And let's see, I think that's it. We're going to be off for a mid-season break the following week after that for Madness Takes Artena, At the Threshold, and Solemn Exterior. And I think that's it for now. All right, let's see. Yes, the Swamp People. Let's go ahead and get started. We are doing Han, which is the last of the players that we're going to be doing. And so this is played by not Chris, but Kristen, who's a good friend of mine. And I'm very excited for her to play with us. She has sent me the most brief character description out of the groups I've received so far. So I'm kind of excited because she didn't send me any reference. So I can kind of do whatever I want as long as it's a drow ranger and a super old dude. Although I know she told me out of game, he's not super old in the description. I'm assuming he's still super old. So Han is a Gloomstalker ranger. He's an elf / drow. And I'm going to go ahead and start pulling up reference. So just to kind of cover the basics of his description, he has ash gray skin, black eyes. He is generally long, thin, and wispy. He has long, straight silver hair. He's tall and lanky. He has dark clothes and various scars across his face and body. He is described as cynical, alert, and decisive. So I went on the hunt for reference for cynical man, and I found this like really wonderful expression that I think is going to translate very well to being an old dude, and I'm very excited for it because he looks so judgy and annoyed. And I honestly have no idea, aside from being like an old dude, which was the first thing she told me when she was going to create her character. I don't know a whole lot about his personality except for some secret backstory stuff. And so I'm going to draw him this way. And if it doesn't fit the personality, then we can always go back and change it later. I'm thinking when they get different costumes and stuff like that, I might do some episodes where I redo them anyway. So we can always do some like various changes. And this guy has kind of a square face, but I know Han is long and thin. So I'm going to elongate that face a little bit, make that chin come down a little bit more. Let me just see how it looks. I'm sorry it's so light. All right, I think you can still see it though. Hi, Beth. I know she looks tall, but she's actually tiny. I was actually just talking to Kat about like scaling them, and I was trying to remember the heights for everyone. So maybe in the chat for the game, I'll be asking you guys to just put all your heights in the chat, and she very generously offered to reorganize them based on how tall they were. All right. He's got, just because he's cynical, he's got like a hand on his face. He's like thinking, I don't know. Neither of my grandparents ever did this when they were thinking, but it feels very like pensive old man to me. So that's what he's going to be doing. I'm just gonna, the dude in my reference is kind of chubby, so I'm trying to like slim him out because we have like a really tall, lanky character. Yes, I'm not trying to rush you, Kat, I promise. All right, and we'll give him some muscle because he's like still a ranger. Anyone who like largely lives in the woods has got to have some muscle. I don't know, there's bears and stuff out there. I'm just kind of going off of my brother who like lives in the woods off the grid. He just like builds muscle because he survives. I forget if I've talked about him before. My brother is basically like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Okay, I have to move down, and the reference I had didn't have feet, so I found feet elsewhere. And we're gonna copy those. I kind of like these 3/4 ones. All right, so just in general, if you're working and your character has a different body type than the character that, or the reference that you're looking at, all you need to do is figure out, like, for example, where the pecs are, where the elbow is. And as long as you have those points and can follow the basic gesture of a hand, he just floats. As long as you have the basic gesture of the hand and the basic position, that's really what you need the reference for. I mean, like when you're just starting off, of course, like follow it a little bit more closely. But once you have the gist of it, it's fairly easy when you know where the muscles are placed and how they're placed to sort of make the character have more or less body fat or muscle, because if you know the muscle shapes and you know where that muscle is going to be grounded in, especially if you can see the center line, then it's fairly easy to change their body type. All right, so we're going to go into, I'm so used to drawing women. I always give men like wider hips than they should have. So we're going to slim down them hips. And actually his legs should start up here. Right. Of course, he can't look too friendly in his posture because he's an edgy ranger. I feel like Brosco and Han, just based on tone of backstory, are going to have a lot in common. And then like Julienne and Scoria are just going to be like the happy little sunshines to their grumps. I'm very excited for it. And I guess Beetle is probably like grumpy, but a little bit less edgy. Like maybe she's like the, you know, that friend that kind of like straddles two different friend groups. I'm thinking like maybe Beetle's a little like that. But of course, I have no idea how you guys are going to interact. I'm very excited for that. But this year making some beautiful art suggestions. We'll just take off the butt, right? He's just flat here. He can have a butt. I just don't want him to look too feminine. That looks weird now. I think in general, like his legs should actually be more muscular because these are not very muscular legs. I guess when I think elf, I just think of like skinny little 20-something Orlando Bloom. So, but that's not necessarily what we want. We want an old dude. but they're elves, so they age gracefully, right? All right. Let's see. I don't think I'm going to copy the other arm. I want the other arm because I think Han has some short swords and a longbow. So we'll do a short sword. All right, let's see if I can make up the hand. If not, I might have to pause and find some reference. All right, back in his hand. I think his hand would be about here. Generally between the hips and the kneecaps, in the middle point there, that's where your hands will rest if they're just sort of moving down naturally. Okay, so then if I'm holding, okay, then the sword hilt would be like here. All right. Oh, Scoria and Julienne. I know Scoria is 4 feet tall and Julienne is like, what, 5'11"? Sorry, I'm just like trying to figure out how hands work. I feel like, you know how they make fun of how like animators will be in weird poses trying to figure out how to animate something. I feel like I do that a lot with reference where I'm like, if this were a sword. All right, so I think we would have the fingers come in here and then we just sort of naturally cascade up the hilt. That doesn't work. I'm really trying to get better at drawing things without reference, but it's so hard. All right. Here we go. And then, you know, it's an elfy blade, so it should probably have some sort of like swish going on. That feels elfy, right? I feel like we need some sort of like there still needs to be a hilt. We'll do like a little curvy swirly hilt. That's fine. Wait, Scoria is 3'2"? I thought she was 4'2" or 4 foot. Oh gosh. Yeah, she is way smaller than I thought she was. Okay. I think this is the general pose. I'm going to work on more specifics for the hand and expressions. So I just want to make sure you guys can actually like see this. Yeah, you can see it okay, I think. And then he should probably have a bow, right? He's a ranger. I don't know. Maybe we'll be avant-garde and not give him a bow. Sorry if that messed up my video. Someone tried to call me. Okay. Here we go with the long elfy ears. I wonder, you know how like goth people get like a bunch of piercings? I wonder how many piercings goth elves would have because there's so much more ear. There's like more canvas space. I wonder if tattoos on ears are more of a thing in elf culture because it's just like such a long, prominent part of the body. It's not necessarily on the face. Just thing to think about. Things to think about. All right. So in general, when you're doing a cartoon character, if you want to make them look old, all you do is draw the lines that are actually on the face if you're drawing someone realistically. So like the lines of the muzzle here, lines like crow's feet, line here to indicate the, there's like a muscle that goes around the eye socket. Sometimes it's dark here. Whatever lines there are in general will indicate age because those lines deepen. And when you draw a cartoon character, you're essentially drawing like what someone looks like with a really intense brightening filter on. And so a lot of things, oh my gosh, the video is sideways. Sorry, guys. Here we go. There we go. I'm so sorry about that. I wonder, oh gosh, I have no idea how to deal with that. Maybe Kat can give me some suggestions. If I put it on do not disturb, but then log into Zoom, will that work? Okay, this guy has like a small nose, but I feel like elves and just people with long faces in general are gonna have longer noses. So I'm gonna give him like more of like a hooked, old grandpa nose. It's a little bit longer. I want to make his expression more angry. So we're going to give him thicker eyebrows. We're going to give him more of an arch. Okay. I'm going to switch to the darker pencil because I feel pretty confident about this. Let's go ahead and draw the eyes. And then one thing you can do is you can make the eyebrows feel like they have more sort of coarse hair to them, which can help with age. Yeah, I feel like he's just someone who's aged gracefully. And then usually the older you get, sometimes your eyes get smaller and your nose gets a little bit bigger, which is why he's got like slightly bigger nose. It's not huge though, but that's okay. There we go. And we've just added a few lines to the face, but it just serves to age the character. And oftentimes your skin will hang on your face. So you'll go from having like rounded edges to a more like block-like or square-shaped features. If you are really skinny, like this character is described, oftentimes the hollow of your cheekbones will appear a little more severe because the skin is sort of hanging a little bit more. So we're going to keep a little bit more of a line here. And then I guess on the neck, usually the skin comes off of the neck in a little bit more of this shape as opposed to this shape, but you can't necessarily see it. Your lips also get a little bit thinner, which is why I'm not giving him anything close to full lips. We'll give him some frown lines. It can look kind of severe. All right. That's working. So let's move on and we should figure out his hair. So I have a couple different long hairstyles that I'm excited about, and they're very like little punk emo kids. So I have this one that's like kind of like luscious locks galore, and I sort of want to use it. It's going to be roughly like this shape, and this guy's hair ends like here, but we need to make this longer. So I'm going to transition to reference to like a longer style here. She just said the hair was long. I don't know how long, but I'm gonna go like full on, like Legolas long. So one thing I like to do when I'm doing cartoon hair, which doesn't always turn up in the painting, but if someone has really pale hair like he does, he's a drow, he has white hair, um, it will turn up. But I like separating the hair into different segments. And usually the segments just sort of indicate direction. So the hair feels like it has volume and it's not just like a holographic shape. So when you're doing a character, even if the character has short hair, this can work. Um, you just keep the segments a little bit shorter in general, because the longer the segments are, the longer it's going to feel the length of the hair is. But if you go through and kind of continue this way, the main thing to keep in mind is that you want to divide the segments into large, medium, and small shapes. And you don't want all of the shapes to be next to each other. So like you might have two small shapes next to a large shape and a medium shape. You want to divvy it up so that it feels varied. Otherwise, it's going to feel more like a pattern, which you do not want. Hair should feel a little bit more unpredictable based on just sort of how it falls. And it's going to come up before going in because it'll turn in towards wherever the part of the hair is. Right. I'm just going to go through and just kind of darken some of these lines. All right. I think that's pretty much it for muscle. I don't think he would have a ton of muscle because when you're old, your muscle just sort of naturally atrophies and it's a lot harder to maintain. Even if you have some, it tends to be a little bit more wiry. Um, let's take a look at some other stuff. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do gear wise. I might just have him holding the sword. And I guess he would probably, oh, well, he has two swords, so maybe dual wields. I don't know if he's left handed or not. Should have probably thought of that first. But honestly, I don't know if Kristen particularly cares. Okay. Well, if anyone has any Ranger-esque clothing suggestions, feel free to go ahead. I'm going to go through and I have a few inspo things saved. I feel like in general, he'd probably have a cloak. He feels decidedly mysterious. So don't want to mess up his quarters hair. But let's go ahead and underneath it have something, some sort of wrap or cloak. I feel like, okay. I can come out here. How long are cloaks? I guess they're pretty long, huh? They go like to the floor. He's edgy though. His is going to be asymmetrical because he was in a fight or something. Living in the woods, Ranger. All right. Knee-high boots, yeah. We'll definitely do knee-high boots. Zip off cargo pants. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. All right. And then we'll have like a, okay, cloak can come in like this, and then we have a couple different buttons. Oh, I guess if it's a cloak, it would come up sideways here, not off to the back. Because it's heavy and things with weight are going to drag until something forcibly pushes them to the side. Right. I just want to add some weight to the cloak and some width so it doesn't feel like paper thin. There we go. All right. And then she said mostly just sort of like dark clothing. So we'll see. Okay, knee-high boots. Let's do, I'm gonna go with like the swishy pointy thing vibe. I feel like what's like the equivalent of like fantasy Velcro? That's what old people wear, right? They wear Velcro so they don't have to like bend down as much. I don't know, slip-off shoes. When my grandfather moved to a home, he switched to Velcro shoes and he loved them. So I'm just not going to do straps. I'm going to say these shoes are like soft enough that you can slide out of them. So we'll give them like some extra wrinkles over here just to show that there's some give. Maybe they have like a strap that comes up or something so they don't fall over. All right. And then I feel like the shoes would be pretty uniform because I feel like this area is already a little flashy at the top. And from what I heard, it sounds like he's not like a super flashy character. He just like he's an elf, but he doesn't like dress all elf fancy. I think I'm just projecting a lot of his personality because I don't have a whole lot else to go on. We'll see. It's kind of fun though. All right. And oh my gosh. All right. I apologize for any background noise. I think my dad just came into our home without knocking. I think my husband's gonna go talk to him now. All right. Let me scroll down. Okay, what else? He's got to have like something kind of like drapey and mysterious. So I'm looking through few different things. He's probably got like leather armor or something on top of that, but he's probably, maybe wherever the armor ends, it's a little bit more drapey. Maybe we'll do, okay, so keeping the pointed vibe. Oh, I'm sorry, can you guys hear him? We should probably have like a cross thing, I guess. That seems pretty D&D-ish, having like just straps. Probably because it hooks up to like his quiver or his bow or something. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Let's see, what else would the armor have? I think about, we could probably have like extra straps somewhere, or maybe, oh, it should have pockets. Everything should have pockets. So some pockets here, some pockets here. I don't know, maybe it's, I think dark leather just isn't necessarily studded. So I think that would give like some brightness to it that I don't think she was going for. Maybe there can be some like overlapping rings or something. Just to give it some visual complexity. Right. I feel like that's a thing, right? Where there's like fabric coming out from under armor. I have no idea what it's called. Move some over here. Feels pretty rangery. I feel like also if you're like camouflaging your stuff, it just helps to have extra fabric, things like that. And then there should probably, well, I guess maybe he doesn't need a belt. That might interrupt, might make it a little more horizontal. I feel like it would be a little more streamlined. Let's give him some like bracers though, or something. We'll give him like some asymmetrical bracers. All right, I feel like that's pretty good. I'm just gonna go solidify this sword a little bit. Just changing around the hilt so it feels a little bit more like, I don't know, a claw or a tooth or something. It feels a little more rangery. Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right, what do you guys think? Any thoughts? Anything we should add? I'm looking over other various reference. I don't want to get too addy because I know the character may want to customize or add other things. Who in the party is the grumpiest? Oh gosh, I mean, probably Beetle. But I get the feeling Han is going to be grumpy, but I can't confirm. I cannot confirm. It's not canon yet. I hope he and Beetle are both like super grumpy together though, and they bond over it. I think that would be amazing. That's my headcanon. And they have a beautiful little like side character relationship where they bicker all the time. All right. I think we're good on the drawing. Yeah, okay. I think it's good too. We'll see. We'll see. We can always add stuff later. So we're going to go ahead and move on to painting. All right, so he's a drow. So he's got gray skin. So we should probably, in general, with watercolor, you start with the lights. So I'm going to start with his hair because that's probably one of the lightest things. And hair in general is going to tint yellow when it gets white. But he's a drow and they're just sort of gray toned in general. So I'm going to tint it like blue, maybe purple. No, we have two characters who have purple motifs. We'll tint it blue. All right. I'm going to go in with just like a really, really pale off-white, and then we'll go through and we'll add some blue shadows to it. Already mixed in a little bit blue so it doesn't come off as yellowish. So we're not going to be meeting Han this week, thankfully, because I still need to scan him and get everything ready so that Kat can add him to the overlay and add his character art. But next week, we will be seeing him in a one-shot with Beth, who is going to be playing Adrienne. She is currently on the chat. And also my friend Allison, Allison Farrell, who you guys may know from some of the other shows here. And today we're going to be seeing Beetlebug and Scoria, who are our Fire Genasi Cleric / Warlock and our Tabaxi Druid. All right. So let's go ahead and start on skin tone. I said like ash gray, but generally you don't want anything completely grayscale. You want to kind of tint it. So with gray, you can usually get away with like tinting a cool color and it'll just feel a little bit more dimensional. We're going to do an initial wash. A wash is just like a spread of like watered down color. And then we'll go back through and we'll add some things to it. So usually I add like pinks to the fingertips and to the joints. And I'm still going to do that, but I'm going to keep it kind of like a muted, darker red because you kind of want to pay attention to the value of whatever you're putting on. So we'll still keep it on there. Just kind of mix it in with some other colors. So it kind of sucks because being in a more humid climate, because I'm used to the LA heat, means that it takes forever for my watercolors to dry sometimes. But it is really nice that I don't have to like frantically move through different washes now, because it used to be everything would dry so quickly, and like with how arid LA is, that you have to really scramble to like get everything in while it's wet. Now I don't have that problem anymore. It's very nice actually. So general adding like a little bit of pink or red to a character. You want to base it on the skin tone, and you want to base the saturation and the value, which is light to dark, on the skin tone. So usually when you're doing a darker skinned character, you can get away with being much, much more saturated and darker. As you go darker, you don't want to keep the same amount of saturation as you would for a light skinned character, because then it's going to look too gray. A light skinned character, you can make out colors more and you can see more undertones in the skin in general. So you want to keep it pretty light, because if you go like deep red and really saturated, it's going to look like a child's cartoon. But the darker the skin tone is, the darker and more saturated your red can be, or your other colors that you're dropping in. So with Han, I'm going a lot darker. I'm going for more of like a deep, like slightly desaturated crimson, because he has this dark gray skin. So you can get away with a little bit more. All right. Just continuing to mix up some of the skin tone, trying to make sure it doesn't get too blue. I'm going to try and do this in sections if at all possible. Oh, he's probably got a shirt on under that cloak. I don't think he's naked aside from his armor. We'll just stick in a shirt color here and assuming it's like kind of high necked. Actually, maybe we should go through and just add that real quick. Just say like simple shirt, something like that. And then we go back and we'll emphasize some of these darker areas. All right. I'm going to try and go around everywhere on the face except for the eyes. The eyes we may go over with a micron at some point. But now we're doing like sort of gentle flesh tones. The red color zone of the face is the main one that you want to pay attention to, because it shows through the most. Even on darker skinned characters, you're still going to get a hint of red here. Whereas the ochre or yellow skin tone on the top and the blue skin tone on the bottom tends to stay a little bit more faint as the skin darkens. Right. And I'm still going to add some gray that tints more blue on the bottom. And I'll go back in and reestablish that in some of the other shadows once this has dried more, because I want to get a few lines that feel a little bit more crisp. This stage is mostly for lines that are going to stay loose and blend in with each other. All right. So I think at this point, the hair is probably dry. So while we wait for the rest of this to dry, we're going to go back to the hair. I'm going to mix up kind of like a neutral bluish gray. I'm just going to start adding in some shadows here. go. I'm using very little water here, so it'll dry quickly. I'm gonna go in with just like some bright white and kind of draw on top of this area here, try and grab some highlights. I'm gonna actually try a gel pen. I don't know if it's gonna show up just because it's already so light, but I wanna add a couple like really light areas on the skin, or not on the skin, on the hair for highlights, just to show that he's got kind of like shiny hair. There is a lighter spot. There we go. Right, I'm gonna go in with my very, very small brush now. And I'm gonna choose an even deeper gray blue for some of the shadows. I can go a little darker blue here because there's usually a blue tint to these shadows below the chin or below the cheek already. Usually at the bottom of the nose has some shadow to it. The area around the eyes, especially at the creases, has some shadow. And by increasing that, kind of going over some of the lines here, I'm just sort of increasing the emphasis on the character's age. Usually you can get away with just leaving the bottom lip kind of skin tone shade or close to it. I'm gonna try and go a tiny, tiny bit darker. But usually your top lip, because it curves inward, is going to have more of a dark tone to it because it's facing away from most light sources, which are usually from above. And the bottom lip is going to turn outward, so it's usually going to be hit by light. There we go. Okay. So one thing I want to pull out is that the character has a number of scars. So I'm just going to go in some of these darker areas with just white, and it's going to kind of blend out as I put it on. And just add some areas where you're seeing something a little lighter. And usually to make it look like there's a scratch somewhere, you have a highlight, and then right next to it, you have a shadow to show there's sort of like a crevice. So we're doing the highlights right now. And then all I need to do is go next to it and add something that feels a little bit more like a dark streak. And it should read like some sort of crevice in the face. I don't quite know where the scars are exactly or how many. I don't think she cares that much. I'm just going to kind of crisscross them in a way that feels like maybe he was attacked by something. There are bears in the woods. He's probably attacked by a bear. Or a very angry deer. Or a crazed ancient squirrel, as Beth suggested. Now we'll go through and we'll add some shadows right next to it. You'll see it'll start to look like a crevice. Usually you want to go a little darker and a little warmer than the existing skin tone to do this crevice. You don't ever want to keep it like an unnatural color. So I'm going to go, since he has a cool undertone to his skin as opposed to a warm undertone, I'm going to go a little cooler and a little darker, and let's see how that looks. I absolutely love the tiny brush strokes I can get with this brush. This is a Raphael Kolinsky size 1. But in general, if you want a good brush, what you want to do is you want to find a brush that when it's barely damp, it will come to a really, really fine point. And technically, if you have a really good larger brush, you should be able to get the same effect. So the light is coming from the right-hand side here because you're getting the dark and then the light. Oh shoot, I did it on the wrong side here. And that means that first we're seeing sort of the crater that the skin leaves and the shadow that the skin on the other side casts, and then we're seeing it catch the light on the other side. All I need to do is kind of go in here and make sure that that light that it's catching is not bigger than the groove I'm creating. All right, that works. Show you guys. There you go. I'm not sure how well you can see it down here. All right, I think he's pretty good with his skin. So let's go ahead and move on. I mean, Rangers are kind of stereotypically green. I don't want to be too stereotypical, but we'll go with like a couple shiny areas on the sword. So I'm just going to go in with like a lighter color where I think it would be shiny. And we'll come in with a darker color later. And for the steel, we should have like a highlight on it, like a highlight on the edge where the angle changes. And the rest of the sword will be a little bit darker. I'll go ahead and add some light / metallic areas on the buttons for contrast. Mix the gold with a little bit of green, so maybe it'll have like a slight greenish tint. And then we'll just do various shades of green for other stuff and kind of go grayish and maybe a little blue with some things. The Ranger kind of screams green, so I'm just going to start mixing up some various tones of green. And we'll start laying those in. You see me like pulling at my brush sometimes, it's because I have cats, and sometimes there is cat hair on my paint palette because our cat Spice, if I forget to put it away, will sit on it for attention because she knows it's important. And she gets hair on it if it's still wet. And I try so hard to keep it clean, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. ahead and mix up some darker yellows. I'm very good at making things look shiny when I work digitally, but I have a lot more trouble with it working traditionally. Probably need to practice more. It helps that all this stuff is shiny. Usually to make something look shiny, you have a highlight in the middle and you have like varying degrees of the highlight that move outwards until you achieve like a shadow shade. That's what I'm trying to do. And then when I get to this light area, I kind of leave it alone. Going with the mid-tone again, which is sort of like what the local color or color under neutral light something is going to look like. And then I need to go in with like a really desaturated yellow. So basically a brown after this dries. And then that should give a sense of light and shadow, at least I hope. Adding like a couple little white highlights helps too. Okay. I'm trying to think of something that isn't connected to the cloak because the cloak is still drying. So let's do these areas here. And that's also kind of raggedy fabric. So I'm going to just have that match the cloak. And that can be all that shade of green. Then we'll switch on to like a different shade of green for the rest of the stuff. Usually with watercolor, you lay in sort of your base wash, which should be the lightest version of whatever you're going to do. And then after it dries, you want to go in, after it's completely dry, you want to go in and play around with it. But you want to wait until it's completely dry because otherwise the colors are going to run together. And usually for shadows and stuff, you want more of a sharp line. We'll wait until this is completely dry and do that sharp line. Mix up a few different browns. So the way to get brown is just to mix the three primary colors together. So like red, yellow, and blue. Blue is really powerful. It's the most powerful color, and it's going to overwhelm yellow and red. And yellow is the most easily overwhelmed color. So if you put equal amounts of blue, red, and yellow, you're going to get a really, really bluish brown. So what you need to do is you need to do a lot of yellow, a medium amount of red, and a little bit of blue. And you'll get kind of a neutral brown. And then based on the brown you want, you'll tint it one way or another. And usually you'll want to tint brown a little bit warm. So a little bit more yellow or a little bit more red. It doesn't read as much of a brown if you tint it too blue. Because blue, the rods that process color in your eyes, the darker it gets, they're able to process blue the longest. So if you have a brown and you add blue to it, we'll read it as more blue. Whereas if it's red or yellow tinted, it's going to read as more brown because we're not processing the red or the yellow quite as much. So for example, this is a more red tinted brown. And you can kind of see the tint in there if you're used to analyzing color like I am, I guess. I don't know, maybe you can't. But it doesn't read as red. It's just red tinted. But these two areas are wet, so I can't finish this quite yet. Oh, you know what? Let's do the boots. Should boots be brown too? Yeah, why not? We use a slightly different brown. I'll use this bluish brown because that kind of works on boots, I think. See, it feels more gray because there's so much blue in there. I just went through and added a little bit of red. got our kind of gray brown boots. I feel like it does feel very Gloomstalker, but since he has kind of bluish dark skin, I don't want to do that anywhere close to where we're actually seeing skin. It's kind of like how you if you wear something that's too close to your skin tone, it's like it just brings out your skin a little too much and it just doesn't look good on you. I feel like it would be sort of like that effect. Maybe Han's favorite color is blue, but he doesn't wear blue because like it looks horrible on him. So he just goes green, like a stereotypical ranger. Because it'll wash you out. I don't know. I look horrible in like pale pink because I have a ton of like pinky skin because I'm super, super white. I'm actually part Mexican, but I got 0 of the melanin genes. All right. I think after this, we're just going to be mixing up various shades of like brown and blue and stuff. That was dry. It wasn't dry. It's leaving my fingerprint. Shoot. Just make it really dark. It'll be fine. All right. Let's go ahead and mix up some of this like deeper brown. You want to do a really, really yellowy brown because the dark shade that you're using for your gold or whatever reflective surface you're doing still needs to be rooted in the same color. It's just so dark that you're not able to see it really anymore. Generally, light is going to hit the area the same place. So if this is light, then it's going to be light across all areas as opposed to just one area. I'm just going to go really dark in just 1 or 2 spots. And I don't know, hopefully that reads as shiny. So much easier when there's an undo button. But watercolor is so pretty. All right. And then this can kind of be dark throughout on the side because the edge of the blade is facing away from the light if the light is coming from here. So it's going to be hit by shadows as opposed to some of these lights the reflections are landing on. Can probably go darker with that actually. You need high contrast in order for something to look shiny. If it stays low contrast, it's just not going to read as shiny. It's going to read as a slight color change. And it can be really scary to do really high contrast when you're concerned about a piece. And the students that I teach, they have a lot of trouble with shiny stuff because of that. Oh, there we go. And just do like the bottoms of the boots and stuff while we wait for things to dry. Add some more black to my palette. So now that the cloak feels pretty dry in most areas, we're just going to go in with a darker color. It doesn't necessarily have to read as green. It can just have like a slight greenish tint to it because the rest of the cloak is green. If this is just darker, we're going to read it as a shadow. And actually shadows tend to take on the complement of the light source. So if the light source is yellow or orange like the sun, the shadows are going to tint blue or purple, even if the cloak is green. So I can kind of do like maybe a teal shadow, like a bluish green shadow. And this is where those pencil lines come in handy. And I'm just kind of going over them with this darker watercolor. Try to keep a lot of the shadows kind of sharp as opposed to curved and angled because he's a sharper, sort of less friendly, or I guess not unfriendly, but like I'm imagining him as a more grumpy character. So I'm letting that shape language kind of show through, trying to keep sharp edges to a lot of the shadows that I do. So at this point, I think the cloak and the other fabric is sort of mixing together. But that's okay. I don't think you can really tell. So then at the back here, we'll get the view of the inside of the cloak. And I think I'm going to tint that a little bit more blue. They could be the same shade. Could be a double lined cloak. I don't know. But in general, just to break up the colors, I think it's a good idea to have separate colors if you can see the inside of something, especially if it's against like something else. You want to raise that contrast and create differentiation between different parts of the costume, especially if there's no like hard black line art to separate it. It's a lot easier to just sort of go over the character as a whole when you use black line art. I used to do that. I used to outline everything in micron pen. And if you're ever on my Etsy store, you can see a lot of the prints, like they're older, have micron pen outlines. but I'm not as much of a fan of that anymore. It just doesn't feel quite as natural. I think when you only use pencil, you can get away with things feeling a lot more painterly as opposed to graphic. And I like that feel a lot. I think watercolor sort of mixes naturally with that. Intense line art, where everything is black and white, it does work on some level, I think, but I think the more tight your line art is, the looser you should go with your painting because the contrast is what usually looks really nice. Like a lot of artists that use watercolor and they use line art, they'll use it more as like washes to get like a soft feel against the hard line. And since I really like that soft feel, I think that's why I gravitate towards just pencil so that you're painting a little bit more, adding your color, adding your values a little bit more with the paint itself. That said, I do want to always emphasize the eyes quite a bit. So we are going to go in and just pull out the eyes here. Just draws a little bit of attention. Right. Oh, he's so grumpy. Poor scarred baby. Oh gosh, I'm finding that I think I may have used up the rest of this color. That looks pretty similar, right? Remember it was reddish. What we'll do, we'll go over the other part again and just at least lay a wash of whatever this color is on top of it. Hopefully we'll still be able to see the pencil through it. It's the only drawback to not using line art is sometimes things that you drew out or spent time on already get lost. Okay, and shirt. I feel like it's the dark blue that would wash him out. So maybe he still has like a little bit of, no, grayish blue is gonna be even worse. I'm gonna give him like a yellowish green shirt then. Something a little lighter that's mostly covered up, but maybe like shows a little bit more personality, even if it doesn't blend into things quite as well. Right, and then pants, we'll just do like maybe like a mossy, more of a mossy green. I'm gonna add some yellow into here. I still want to keep it dark. Might be a little too saturated. Here we go. Right, again, it's kind of blending, but we'll go back in a little bit and we'll add in some shadows. We'll add in line between the pants again. I'm gonna do some soft washes of like a darker color so it feels like the dye is a little bit mixed, or I don't know, maybe it's just dirty. Okay. Oh, we need that color on the sleeves over here and up above. There we go. And then we should have maybe like a leather wrap on the sword. So again, if you're doing like something with like a ton of complex lines and you haven't drawn it out before, but you know it's all going to have the same kind of base color, in general, it usually just makes more sense to lay in that base color and then draw with your darker color when you go back in. I'm going to do a reddish brown, and we'll come back there. Go ahead and do the straps. Wow, we're actually pretty close to done. I'm surprised. This is going to be another quick character art. I don't know if I'm getting faster or if the last couple characters have just been a little bit more simple. So in general, if you're doing a ranger or a character that wants to stay fairly incognito and they're not wearing grays and blacks, the main thing that you want to concentrate on if you're doing character art for them is to keep everything desaturated. What I mean by that is that if you have like a bright green on your palette, even if you know your character would have green, don't put that green on as is. Mix it with brown. So you want to take the blue, yellow, and red, mix some sort of a brown, and then desaturate the green. Or another thing you can do to instantly neutralize something is mix it with its complement. So mix the green with red, and it'll sort of neutralize the intensity of it. And then when you have like a green that feels a lot more dark and earthy, and not necessarily even dark, because you can desaturate something with white as well. But when you have something that doesn't feel so intense, then only then add it on for color, because what's going to make your painting or your art look really childlike and kind of, you know, juvenile more than anything is keeping colors in that are really, really saturated, especially in areas of shadow. Shadows should always be less saturated. You can actually get really colorful shadows as long as they are desaturated. If you have gray shadows, it's going to wash out your character and make them feel kind of flat. Usually there's a fair amount of color to shadows. It just has very, very little saturation. So this character is actually quite colorful with all their different shades of green and their, you know, gold sword and everything. But in general, they're just a very desaturated character. So their costume is still reading as muted and sort of foresty. In general, things in nature are not going to be saturated unless they're screaming, hey, pollinate me, or hey, I'm poisonous. So it would be kind of cool to have like a ranger that wore bright colors because they believe that was the ultimate form of intimidation, because that's what poisonous creatures did. And they just look absolutely garish and outlandish, and they think it projects danger, but everyone just thinks they look like an idiot. And at this point, I'm just adding in a few touches. This is still wet, so I don't quite want to get here yet, but what I will do is start trying to add in some of the details. The armor. Oh gosh, which is true, it's harder to see now as I put that extra wash on there. But you can still sort of see it. I like the asymmetrical curves on here. I think it's dry enough to the point where I can start adding lining on the boots. I'm just going to do a slightly darker shade of brownish gray. I'm not going to be super colorful with it. At this point, we're almost done. I'm just going to go through and pull out the line on the pants once again. Add a few shadows / wrinkles. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's Han. Here, let me zoom in and show you. So before we go, thank you so much for everybody who is watching. I just want to plug things one last time. So if you come back in like 5:30, 6:30, if you come back in 2 hours, because I ended early, we are going to have the premiere of MissGuided Magic, sort of prequel premiere. We have a one-shot with Kristen and Abby playing our Fire Genasi cleric and / warlock and our Tabaxi druid. And we're going to do a one-shot to introduce them next week at 7:30 as well, or 4:30 Pacific time. We're going to be doing the one-shot introducing our other 3 characters, played by our other 3 amazing players, Allison, Beth, and Kristen. And before that, we will be continuing to do Watercolor Wizardry. The 20th at 6 p.m., we have Chaos Commentary, featuring our friend Dawn. The 21st at 5 p.m., we have At the Threshold, which is our other 5e homebrew game. The 22nd, we have Solemn Exterior, which is another long-term campaign. And then next week on the 27th, in addition to MissGuided Magic stuff the previous day, we will have Chaos Curiosities again. After that, Madness Takes Artena, At the Threshold, and Solemn Exterior are going to be on their mid-season break, but they will be back soon with more adventures. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll be posting this online. I hope to see you in a couple hours.